Hello, everyone. This is Jordan Ramirez, and you are tuning in to a brand new episode of Film Talk with Jordan Ramirez. I apologize for the hiatus that I may have been gone for a while, but we have a very special guest, and it's my uncle, Dio David. It's great to see you on the podcast.
Jordan, so glad to be here.
As anyone would say, when you're here, you're family. And your family to me.
There you go. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And the film that my uncle has chosen is Springsteen Deliver Me from Nowhere, directed by Scott Cooper, starring Jeremy Allen White. Jeremy's, I don't know if I got that right. Jeremy Allen White or Jay Allen White. I might have gotten that. What the devil is uh oh no, I was right. Jeremy Allen White, Jeremy Strong, Paul Walter Hauser, Stephen Graham, and Odessa Young, and it's also written by Scott Cooper and adapted from Warren Zane's Deliver Me from Nowhere. Yeah, it's a great choice.
Thank you.
First, I want to say after watching this film that originally, when I saw like the sneak previews and the trailers, I wasn't convinced that I wanted to see this movie because it looked like every other musical biopic that any studio would promote because maybe it's related to the cliches and the tropes that often people are associating with other musical biopics. But this one feels a little bit different because not only was it trying there may be still a little bit of the tropes in the movie that I would maybe want to touch on, but it does it in a way that feels more subtle and more emotional. How would you say it in after you saw the film?
Yeah, so I guess I should start by saying I'm a huge Springsteen fan. He's been a big presence in my life since I was a kid. I was born in 1971, and I always heard Springsteen on the radio when I was a young man, and let's say even from age 11 onwards. I listened to a lot of Springsteen, and he meant a lot to me and to people from my generation, also people a little bit older as well. So the movie is centered on the creation of this album called Nebraska. And Nebraska is a bit of a anomaly in the Springsteen canon. A lot of people think of Springsteen as this huge mega superstar, like he's known for these stadium anthem rock pieces like Born in the USA, etc. And so there's an image of him as being very, very, how can I put it, like larger than life, like a pop culture icon, that sort of thing. This movie isn't about that at all. This movie is about the man Springsteen. And what I found really compelling is that it's about the inner child. So we see him as a boy and his encounters with his father. And that's probably the most significant relationship of his life, with his dad. Like a lot of his songs center on that. And if you know anything about him, his whole world is kind of built from that. In fact, he says that the persona he inhabits when he's on stage is his father. He
Mm.
says, I'd love to be that guy, but it's my dad. It's
Hmm.
kind of an interesting factoid about him. But the movie, getting back to the movie, this particular moment in history where we are in America in 2025, it's a time where it seems we're living through the age of authoritarianism, of the strongman, and there's a notion of what it means to be a man and of masculinity that's very limited, in my opinion. And what the movie creates is an alternate view of masculinity because it offers an opportunity for men to show their sensitive side. You see this guy who's always associated with a certain virile image of very strong man on stage and commanding presence and that sort of thing. But in the film, he's really revealing his emotional core, which is very soft and vulnerable. Again, that inner child image. So I thought that the fact that the movie came out now is particularly interesting because it's a counterpoint to what we're all going through in America in 2025.
It does. I never thought of it that way, but it is pretty interesting. So, yes, as you said, it is about the concept and the creation of the Nebraska album between 81 and 82 is where the movie is set off. And it was pretty much an interesting look into, as you said, his inner child, also trying to confront his past, like his nostalgic memories. And also, I thought it was a pretty interesting choice of the director to include scenes. Well, in particular, the scene where Springsteen is in his home and it's in New Jersey. and he's flipping through the channels, and then he sees the movie Badlands, where it's about the Starkweather case. And then originally he wanted to center the song about the Stark from the Starkweather's point of view. And then later, as you mentioned, when he sort of goes back to his nostalgic memories, he inserts himself into this song, and then he changes it from Starkweather to Nebraska, which I thought was an interesting point that led from just watching a particular film that he sees on his screen and then going back to his memories and then trying to insert himself into these memories, which I thought was a pretty interesting sort of
Yeah,
concept.
there's a scene in the movie where he strikes, he's writing the lyrics to the song Nebraska, which is about this serial killer basically
Mm,
who falls in love with a girl and kind of kidnaps her, kills the father, takes her away, and they go on a killing spree through the state of Nebraska. And in the film, he's writing it, the lyrics, and he's using the word he as the pronoun of choice. So he's watching. Then he strikes out he, and he writes the word I. I saw her standing on her front porch. So he inserts himself into the role of the killer. So this is, to me, a perfect metaphor for what the movie or the album is all about, which is a real plumbing of the another side of the human psyche. It's about evil. It's about the problem of evil. It's about confronting the shadow side of himself and of America writ large. The other major artistic influence, apart from that film and The Night of the Hunter, which is another film that's referenced in this new Springsteen film, is the collected stories of Flannery O'Connor.
hmm
You know anything about her? She's a Southern Gothic writer, and her stories are extremely, extremely dark.
mm,
Um, she grew up Catholic in Protestant, mostly Protestant Savannah, Georgia. Actually, I visited her house. I did a tour there, and it's
mm,
a fascinating place, and it's a fascinating city if you ever get a chance to go, because Savannah is architecturally laid out with all these squares, all these parks with
mm,
squares, and around each park, a community formed, usually around an ethnic or religious identity. And for Flannery O'Connor, it was the Catholic bubble of Savannah that she grew up in. From her room, she could see the cathedral, the parochial school that she would go to as a girl all the way up to when she graduated high school. So it gives you insight into who she was. And if you don't know anything about her writings, one example, the most famous one, is about a Sunday afternoon jaunt. A family goes out, so it's two kids, parents, mother-in-law. They go in the car in 1920s, south. They go for a nice. You think it's a comedy, right? So they're kind
mm,
of having these comedic episodes, banter, dialogue between them. Well, at some point their car breaks down, so now they're stuck. Like, what are we going to do? Another car stops to help them. Well, turns out it's a serial killer, and he kills all of them execution style. He just takes
mm,
one by one into the forest and shoots them in the head. So it's a real kind of gut-wrenching story, but that gives you an idea of like the mental or the artistic territory he was exploring in this album, and which is reflected very well in the film, of this kind of just wrestling with the shadow side.
hmm And it's pretty interesting because when he does like the demos of his songs that will later be incorporated into the album, I don't know if this was from like the source material. I don't know if you read the book, Delivered Me from Nowhere. But there's a section of the film where he has in his mind like all the tracks that he's wants to put in this album. And then when like there is a scene where he's singing Born in the USA and it sounds like it's a commercial hit, it's going to be there. And then he says, the when they were about to record Nebraska that there's something missing, that it's all buried underneath this layer. And then it takes time in the story that he says he's not going to put in Born in the USA, Glory Days, and all those songs that he originally wanted to put in the album. He decided he wanted to shelve them and he wanted to focus mostly on Nebraska, which I thought was an interesting point.
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of a revelation for most people because he's known for that subsequent album, Born in the USA. That was what established him as a true superstar. Like, I
Hmm
was alive then, 1984, when it came out. You couldn't get away from Springsteen. It was on every radio, every video, MTV, heavy rotation. It was just very present in the culture, and it kind of made his name. Now, that's the superstar level. He became a star in 1975 when he was on the cover of both Time and Newsweek, same week. with
Mm,
the headline "The Future of Rock and Roll." And that Future of Rock and Roll anointing was done by John Landau, who was then a rock critic, very
mm.
respected writer, who became his best friend and became his manager. And he's in the film. He's the guy who's with him most on screen, and he kind of saves his life when Springsteen kind of spirals into depression. John Landau is the voice of reason and the friend who helps him out of it.
Yeah, I do appreciate Jeremy Strong's performance. He's like, as you mentioned, he is his moral guide and compass. He is the best friend who leans to help him out whenever there's anything going wrong with him. And as you said, he's the one who helped save his life in the story, which I thought it is impressive that he keeps wrestling with his inner child, that he could not shake or let go of it. And it's not just his relationship with his father. I don't know if this person, but it's also with the Faye character as well, the woman
Mm.
whom he sort of falls in love with and has a relationship with. And because he's so busy with this album and he's busy with other stuff that he didn't have time to be with her and her daughter, which I thought it's a pretty interesting dynamic just wrestling between these two. Uh,
Yeah, it's an open question. I mean, was he too busy or did he just sort of abandon her? And what's interesting is the album that came out right before Nebraska was called The River. It was a double album, so it had two discs in the album package. And there's a song about a woman just like Faye in that album. In fact, all those people you see in the movie, his father, his mother, his girlfriend. They're people who he would have encountered growing up in Asbury Park, New Jersey. And that's the thing with Springsteen that differentiates him from a lot of people in the performing arts. This world that he portrays is the world he grew up in. So he deliberately set out to people the world. So he grew up on the New Jersey boardwalk, which is, it's a period of economic decline. And, what used to be maybe a fashionable or popular destination, the boardwalk, he peoples it with, carnival barkers and sort of street performers and buskers and marginal types and that sort of thing. Well, he kind of mythologized that. He created it in a way for the rest of the world to consume. Because if you just saw it without his artistic lens, you'd think, what a sad, lonely place, right?
mhm,
So, in the same way that he took characters from that world and he put them into his artistic world, people like Faye in the movie well, they figure prominently again and again and again. Single moms. He has a song called Spare Parts, which is about making do with whatever you have in this life, your failed relationship. His most famous song probably is Born to Run. And Born to Run starts off, I had a wife and kid in Baltimore, Jack. I went out for a ride and I never went back. Now, this is a popular anthem that everybody gets into the sort of da na 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 na, the rhythm of the musicality of it, but it's a very sad song. It's a
mhm,
song about a man abandoning his family, looking for love in a bar, not finding it, or maybe having a momentary fleeting connection and then that falling apart, right? And just fundamentally about loneliness. And I think if you really want to understand Springsteen, you should look in the other art forms of America. In painting, for instance, it's the same spirit as Edward Hopper, or in writing, there's a little bit of Henry Miller in there too. It's this very perceptive analysis of in this country where we prize individuality, we're prone to loneliness, we're prone to alienation from each other.
mhm. And I think that it is very reflective in this movie. The feeling of loneliness, the feeling of what happens if you get onto something and then all of a sudden, because you have so much other stuff that you want to achieve, that you have to give all that up, or you can't let it go because you're stuck with it for most of your adult life. And I thought that was one of the things that the director, I thought, wisely chose to channel in this particular film, as you mentioned about the vulnerability of masculinity, about trying to rely on these memories. And I also thought the theme of Springsteen going back to his childhood of learning or about what his relationship was like with his father, and then meeting his father in the present in the movie was actually pretty, I would say, powerful in the film, just to get to know what his relationship was like, which I thought was pretty interesting.
Yeah, and he talks about it a lot, in his live albums. He would he was known for these 5 hour long concerts, right? Like these epically like intense marathon like concerts, 5 hours, a long time to perform on stage. But he would interrupt the song, or let's say narrate the song choices with anecdotes from his life growing up where he did. And frequently he would talk about his dad and his relationship with his dad and his family and all of that. And so some of those scenes are depicted in the film, like the father coming up the stairs or having to go into this blue collar bar somewhere in New Jersey and tell his dad to come home because his mom was waiting in the car. She didn't go and she sent him as a, I don't know, 7-year-old kid to go get his dad. So you see it from his point of view, right? I'd
Yeah.
like to give a shout out here to my friend Adam Garber. He's going to be launching a podcast pretty soon as well about film. And we talked about the film, and he had a very perceptive take on where the film leads, right? It's a climax, and the climax leads to Springsteen going to see a therapist and have a session where he actually breaks down and you see tears running down his eyes. I mean his cheeks. And how what an anomaly that is in contemporary cinema that you would have a movie building to this emotional breakthrough that is in a way a commercial for therapy, for getting help, for saving yourself, you know. And in the end notes to the film, what you see on stage on the screen is that he's still in therapy, after
Mhm.
so many decades, and he credits it with saving his life, actually. So at a time, again, how I started the conversation with, this cartoonish idea of what masculinity means in America, you have a movie that's actually making it okay to go get help if you're feeling lonely or depressed or anything else.
Yeah.
And now a message from Jordan Ramirez for Film Talk with Jordan Ramirez.
I want to take a break from this episode to thank my listeners/viewers who watch the videos on my YouTube channel and listen to each new episode on Spotify. While this show is a labor of love and passion that isn't about the movies that I like, this is also a show that is about the films that you like. Have a film that you want to recommend to the podcast? Make sure to recommend it in the comments section on YouTube and on Spotify, and you will receive a shout out in a future episode. Want to be a guest on the podcast? Click on the sign up form link in the episode description for further details. If you like this episode or my previous episodes, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more interviews in the near future. The goal for this channel is to reach up to 100 subscribers both on YouTube and on Spotify. It's just that easy. And now, back to our regularly scheduled episode. Yes. Um, that is something that I thought this movie channeled in because um, in most biopics, and I hate to go back to what I said earlier, most films would depict like the artist struggling with depression, or not depression, with alcoholism, drug addiction, relationships that they can't let go of, or anything like that. That one would often see in biopics, whether it's about a musical artist or an artist or an actor or anything like that. But the movie, as I saw it, it didn't do it like so over the top or so like trying to glamorize or glossify it, and I don't know if that's the way to put it. Instead, it felt more subtle. It wasn't like trying to be too over the top. It wasn't trying to be like overdoing it. Instead, it felt more authentic and realistic in their performances, and also in the way that the characters speak to one another in their relationships, which I think is what makes this film so unique for me as I watch it.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I mean, the film is a gem, I think, for a lot of different reasons. You would think in a movie about Springsteen that sort of the centerpieces would be musical performances of him on stage, but actually half the musical performances he's on stage, he's playing in somebody else's band. He's in a cover band at the Stone Pony, which is a famous dive bar that he used to play at, kind of rough and tumble bar scene in New Jersey. And he would play as a guitar player in somebody else's band. So it's not fronting him as, this musical presence. It's really him as an artist. And going back to that John Landau connection, he plays a key role in saving Springsteen as well because he's the shield that allows him to explore, to plumb these artistic depths while the record company is beating the door down, saying, we need another album, we need some hits, because of course, all they care about is the money, right? So they want to
Hmm.
sell singles at the time, heavy rotation videos, that sort of thing. But Springsteen didn't want that. In fact, he insisted when this album was produced, you were going in this direction before telling the story of the album. He didn't want it like made pretty. He decided, let's go back to the 4 or 8 track recording. I forget the primitive technology he used to record it when he was
Hmm.
alone in this house with one other audio engineer helping him. He wanted that spare quality. He wanted that kind of very rough at the edges, all kind of recording to be the final product, which again was kind of almost almost unheard of as far as I'm aware in the music industry that you would go to that recording which was meant to just capture ideas for songs or some idea for an album and use that to be the final product. In fact, insist when the audio engineer said, "Oh, we want to like make it better." He's like, "No, no, 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 no. I don't want you to make it better. I want you to capture exactly that sound." And that's in the end what was released. And a lot of people didn't get the album. I have to tell you that it came. I remember going to back then. It was called Peach's Record Store in
Hmm.
Tampa, and you would just find these big remainder bins with Nebraska and a few other
Oh,
albums because it came out and it shot to that top because people love Springsteen, but very quickly fell because people didn't understand it.
mm.
Didn't really didn't really cohere with their image of the man.
No, no. I'm surprised that from hearing it from you that it did not sell well, even though it was number three. To hear that
Yeah.
to hear that it fell down because people didn't get it.
Yeah,
I
critics got it. Critics got it, but it didn't have any hits. It didn't have any hits, and because of that, it didn't get the exposure. There was one song, Atlantic City, he released a video of, got some play, but it wasn't nowhere near like what came before or after the
Hmm.
album.
And that's pretty interesting and amazing that to hear you say that.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
but yeah, but I liked that in the film when he and his radio engineer or engineer technician is helping to set up the equipment that I don't know if I've ever seen technology look like that because I'm not familiar with that technology from when the movie was set, or maybe I have not seen it in person, but it looked pretty unique when I hear him recording his songs through that machine, and it's basically him and the engineer just trying to get the right acoustics, the right sound,
right.
and and of course when he sends the demo tape to John. At first, you thought, oh, he's not going to accept this. He's not going to let the record company do it. No, he just sits in his office, he listens to it, and then he goes through the yeah, he reads through the letter that goes with the cassette tape, and he's understanding what each of these songs that he just recorded on the demo tape represent and what they mean, which I thought was a pretty interesting transition.
Yeah, yeah, and he really of all the people in Springsteen's universe, he really gets Springsteen. He believes in him as an artist, and he is confident enough that when the record company executive comes in and says, "Okay, let's listen to what Springsteen is planning to release," and he plays it for him, course, the reaction is like, well, I can't release that. And John Landau just holds his line. He says, look, my job isn't to please you. My job is to represent this artist. And his rule is that this will be released like this and you will comply, which is kind of impressive because you would think in that industry, as most industries, money talks and whoever has the control of the budget has the power. But in this instance, it's when the artistic vision won out. And I, consistently, I think this album is rated in the top 100 of all times because of that. It's a very, very pure expression of what he wanted to communicate at the time.
Yeah, it is very much so. And getting back to Springsteen and his dad, the moment it's a little bit later in the film, the moment he gets a call from his mom, because his parents are now in California, the moment where he receives a call from his mother saying that his father he was out at work and she hadn't seen him, he was arrested, and then all of a sudden he's in Chinatown. And the moment Springsteen hears his mother on the phone, he says, "I'm going to go get a plane and I'm going to get dad back." And it's amazing that he literally uh, got on a plane to go to California to search for his father. And he did find him in this, I think it was like a bar in Chinatown, and he got to meet him. And you see him, he's a little bit older, he's a little bit heavier, but not too heavy. But it's like that's sort of the one type of connection that you see into him, that he got to meet him and to help him out. And then he,
Yeah. Yeah. And at the end of the film, of course, there's a scene of reconciliation between the two of them, which is very touching as well. I mean, the dad was, a blue collar guy. There's a notion that people who work jobs that are really, really hard, they're on their feet all day, or they're very physical jobs, very taxing on the body, that people like that experience a lot of frustration frequently, and that can be um, shown in alcohol abuse or drug abuse. It crops up in a lot of different ways, but it's often taken out on the children. That frustration with life, the frustration with their careers and their ability to achieve the goals that they had set for themselves when they were young, manifests in abuse in the family, and that's kind of what's hinted at. Now, I've never read an account where Springsteen flat out says I was abused as a kid, but it's suggested very strongly in the film there was some physical abuse as well. So again, it's like, what does it mean to be a man? How do you cope with that? And all of that kind of created the artist called Bruce Springsteen, because without it, who knows? Maybe he would have just lived a normal life and never taken chances, never really became who he was.
yeah. Yeah, pretty much. And this this might be a little bit off topic, but going back to the memories of when there's a scene where he's flashing back to this house that was, I think it was like on a hill, and he
Mm,
and Bruce Springsteen, and I don't know if it was his real sister, because we only
yeah,
see like once. Okay, it was his real
yeah,
sister,
yeah, yeah.
and they were all running through the cornfield, and his dad said that someday you're going to live in a house like that, and
Mm.
they're running out in the fields as one of Springsteen's songs is playing in the background. And it's like, it's a really interesting scene, just like going flashing to the past, and then here's Springsteen like in the present, seeing that same place, but it's a little bit older. The corn, I think it's like the corn or the wheat in the field is died out, and that house is there. And I thought it was a pretty interesting moment just to see him channeling in that
Yeah,
moment.
he's got several kind of like his idol Bob Dylan. He has a number of visual metaphors that recur in his songs, and one of them is this mansion on the hill, right, which
Hmm.
represents the gulf between the haves and the have-nots in American society in particular. And the fact that his father would take the children out there and kind of teach them, that that's something that we don't have. Kind of like mm, convey this frustration to in a very visceral way to his kids. There's another song on this album, Nebraska, called "Used Cars,"
Mm.
and it's about a boy and his father comes home in a brand new used car, which is
Mm.
itself a contradiction, right?
Yeah.
And how they go around the block, and all the neighbors come out to see them drive around, and they're described as kind of a beat up old car, and just the shame of that, and the grinding fact of poverty, and the sense of like low status existence in this society of riches and what you see on TV.
Yeah.
So it's very, very present in his music, and especially that album, the sense of economic disadvantage.
Absolutely. Which I think is one of the reasons I think why this film feels so strongly. You mentioned used cars. It harkened me back to a scene where I guess he was at a car dealership, and I think he was trying to buy a new car, is what I
Mm,
was getting at.
yeah, that's right.
And the one thing I thought, I don't know if he would have said it, but it sounded like this is something he could have said. He touches the feature of the car, which is like where you insert your cassette tapes,
Mm.
and he said it could have had a record player in it or something like that, which I thought that could have sounded like something he would
Yeah,
have.
yeah. In fact, it was told to me, perhaps it's apocryphal, but it was told to me by a employee of a high fidelity musical equipment store, like a stereo shop. He said that back in the day when they first launched audio in cars, they actually did create a record player that could play in your car. It
Hmm.
had a lot of stabilizers in it so that if you hit a bump, it wouldn't destroy the sound. But he said that existed. So it's kind of maybe a callback to something that actually happened. I don't know if, again, if it's absolutely true or not, but it's an interesting idea. What to me that scene was about was for the first time in his life, he's buying a new car. And
Hmm.
again, that song, right? So
Hmm.
it's showing that he's arrived, he's made it. And in a way, that's what sets the whole dynamic of the film into motion is this idea that here's a guy who came from a disadvantaged home, who hit it big, he had a lot of potential, he was actualizing his potential. And then he couldn't deal with his success. After the
Hmm.
river, he had to retreat because he couldn't handle it. He couldn't handle the fact that he was adored and he was considered a rock god and
Hmm.
all that the money and the fame and all that brings. He just didn't want any of it. So he retreated to his this rental, beautiful home in the in a kind of rural part of New Jersey, it looks like, and produced this album, which again, what an anomaly. You know, you wouldn't have expected a star at that level, about on that cusp of superstardom to do something like this.
Yeah, and the fact that somewhere in the film he decided to move to California instead of remaining in New Jersey, which I I thought it was pretty interesting that he made that decision just in the moments when he couldn't meet with the Faye character anymore because he was so consumed with this creation of this album. He was so consumed with work and he was so consumed with the memories that were almost like trying to prevent him from moving forward with his problem with depression, which I thought was pretty interesting.
Yeah, he did go to California, but then he moved back. I think he may have a home still in California. I don't know. I'm certainly he's wealthy enough to own a home on both coasts, but I think he did come back to his community eventually. My if memory
Mm.
serves. He's kind of like local in the area still where he grew up. So that I mean, his career took a very interesting trajectory after this because he met the first woman he married, who was kind of an actress and model, on the strength of Born in the USA and that tour. And they were together a very, very short time. They got divorced, and that was the subject of the following album, Tunnel of Love, which is a great, great album on the sort of impossible tango between men and women. And, he really explores what that's about right on that album about breakups basically, and then he ends up marrying a bandmate, Patty Scalfi, I think it's how you pronounce it, and then
Okay.
they had a family and he's still married to her, and it's a very stable relationship. So it was an interesting moment for him. You recall in the movie when he meets Faye, she's like, well, are you seeing somebody? And he says, kind of, sort of, maybe. We never meet that person. We know nothing about that person, but it seems like he's going from relationship to relationship at that point in his career.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, it's a pretty interesting moment. So, okay, so we are just about at the 5 minute mark. So, what we usually do at this moment is we wrap up our thoughts on the film. What are your concluding remarks or takes on this film? Why do you think people should go see this movie, even though it may be out on in theaters or maybe out on streaming platforms soon? So yeah,
Yeah,
so
I think this movie is a perfect marriage of subject matter with treatment. In that the album Nebraska is very, very similar to this film in its feel and its themes. So, in a way, the film coheres perfectly to this quirky album. It's not meant to be a blockbuster film. It's not meant to be a biopic in the traditional sense of, the hero's journey of the lifetime of the artist, like you might see one about Johnny Cash or any other famous American musician. You get a sliver in his career. You just basically get this 1 year, 2 year period where he creates this album. And because of that, the filmmaker, quite impressively, I think, compresses the Springsteen story into that through flashbacks, through um, flash forwards, right? Because you see him on tour for Born in the USA,
mhm.
and it provides a satisfying story in itself, and you get a sense of who he is as an artist. But it's really zeroing in on this particular block of time. And that seems to be a trend now with biopics, as far as I can tell. They're not going for the full on life story from birth to death. It's really
Hmm.
just for a particularly meaningful sliver of time in their careers or in their lifetimes where we get to see through that lens the arc of their life.
Absolutely. And I think um, I don't know what the future of filmmaking may bring, but I hope that maybe unfortunately, we live in the age of artificial intelligence and not just the filmmaking industry, but in other industries as well. I'm hoping that maybe independent filmmakers could start to fill in that gap of if they do sort of biopics of real life individuals or artists, then maybe we can see a glimmer of that window gap, as you mentioned of maybe a particular time in that person's life that we could see more of those types of stories.
Well, I can suggest one film if you haven't seen it. It's called I'm Not Here, which is about Bob Dylan, who is Springsteen's inspiration, right?
Mm, yeah.
And they took a similar approach in that film in that they used I want to say seven maybe. They asked seven directors to film a particular tale related to Dylan.
Oh, you
Sometimes
mean
it
seven
was
actors?
yeah, well, seven actors, including women, played Dylan in these segments, but the
Yeah.
segments were all directed by different directors
Hmm.
and they
Interesting.
had radically different feels to them. So the idea was it was sort of a mosaic of the life of Bob Dylan, who himself is a protein character. I mean, the guy has so many different faces and personalities and musical styles and singing styles, etc. in his career. He's like Picasso that way. He has like so much variety. He's put out so many albums. So you could do that with someone like him. You could conceive of a Springsteen film like that as well, like Springsteen during that tour, Springsteen as a young man, Springsteen as an old man. He's in the headlines today. He's protesting Trump. He's very, very political. He's still as politically engaged now as he was when he was an angry young man living through the Vietnam War era, which is documented in his early albums. So throughout his life, the through line is, anti-fascism, anti-authoritarianism. He's a very politically engaged artist, and so he's particularly relevant for this time.
Okay. So we're gonna wrap up here, and I don't know if you have anything to plug or to promote because again, your family here.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah. And well, I just want to say I think you're doing a great job, Jordan, with the pod. It's wonderful that you're doing this, and I really admire, the discipline it takes to do this. And yeah, we're going to be launching I mentioned my friend Adam Garber earlier. We're going to be launching a podcast about film as well, yet to be named. But maybe once I have it up and running, we can send you the link, and we can cross promote and appear
okay
on each
then.
other's shows.
All right, sounds good. So we're just about getting ready to wrap up here. And again, this is Jordan Ramirez and thanking my uncle Dio David to be on the podcast talking about the films Springsteen, the Springsteen film. Oh my goodness, something
Deliver me
from
from nowhere.
Deliver Me from Nowhere. Thank you for that. Okay,
Sure.
and we're just gonna wrap up, and I hope to see you again soon. And until then, I'll see you at the movies. And Dio David, thank you so much for being on the
Thank you,
podcast.
Jordan. Thank you for asking me.
Okay, bye.
Bye.